Buzz. Hope you're well. Dusting off the week that is past. Chilly week in Sydney here, and I've been doing some travelling out and about and seeing some areas outside of Sydney, and I'll tell you, it certainly is a very diverse land that we have here, and not only the climate itself, but the people. Right now we have, and I've been speaking at length about this on Property Buzz, there's certainly a tale of two cities. People who are quite happy and content with some of the changes that are taking place in relation to property-related taxes, and then there's a whole other cohort of people who are pretty upset about it all and still trying to come to grips with it. We're right now in the midst of a frenzy with everyone trying to sort their lending out in their self-managed super fund. We spoke at length about this last Friday, and I spoke to a opinion piece I penned in relation to not letting your buyer's agent's marketing campaign become your retirement strategy. That's really resonated with a whole bunch of different people. And as I said last week, I was on the phone to my accountant, and he pretty much said, if you haven't yet sorted out your super fund or set your super fund up at that point in time, good luck trying to get borrowing sorted out and everything worked out prior to the deadline to actually settle on that. Well, we're now a week past that, and I would say the ship has sailed. I was chatting with a team over at Finny Mortgages only on Wednesday, and they were talking about how they're still getting people calling them up saying, I'm still trying to get my fund set up. Can you help me out with lending? And they're like, you're pushing it right now. Unless you get your sequence absolutely perfect, you're going to struggle to actually keep compliant and even settle. So we're going to chat a little bit about that today. Amongst some other things, Liam Garman, my co-host, he's not around this week either, so I've scrambled to pull in a special guest, the co-founder of Managed. As you all know, not only do I do podcasting and sometimes being but a humble journalist, I am the CEO of Managed, which is a platform for property managers to use for their investors. We'll chat a little bit about that today, get some views and opinions and observations around property managers. I'm hearing some stuff going on in the background, particularly in relation to self-managed super funds and leasing around it, which I'd like to bring to the fore. Some stuff there that makes me a little bit nervous. And reporting back on last week, I had a co-host in, Steve Cooper, who's the lead on defence security here at Momentum, and we had a really good chat. Very, very popular. I think that live stream that we did is the second most popular we've done so far. And we spoke about politics and the goings on in and around it. We spoke about the deal done to get self-managed super fund borrowing cancelled. We spoke about the dichotomy of responsibilities when it comes to what you're allowed to do as a company director and what politicians sometimes do, and sometimes those two things don't stack up. A lot of discussions still around whether or not people have exploited knowledge prior to the budget and used it to either purchase property themselves or advise friends and families to do so. So that really sparked quite a lot. But we spoke a little about the security environment. And if you are interested, and it seems as though some people are, I had a really good chat this week with Mike Pizzullo, and you may not know who he is, but up until about sort of 3-4 years ago, he was a pretty senior public servant over a number of different governments. He's worked in some very high offices. He was the Secretary of the Department of Home Affairs for quite a long period of time. He was the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Defence. And if you're considering or wondering what's going on in the world at the moment, and Australia's spot in the world, and potential conflict moving forward in the security environment, that being that geopolitics and the security arrangement for Australia all comes downstream to property investment, I'd go and tune into that. I'll put the notes in the show notes so you go and have a look at it. So good chat, good discussion. But Alex, Property Buzz, you haven't been on this before?
No.
Did you get a brief about what it was all about?
Or you just said turn up.
There's
a free coffee in it.
That's all you need. And you are drinking water, but
I didn't get the free coffee.
You didn't get the. Well, we get that sort of.
I'll have it in lieu.
It is Friday morning, and I know it can take a little bit to get started. But Property Buzz is popular.
I don't know why.
I know. Who would have thought?
I think the spontaneity of what you set out to do, unscripted, following your instincts, and just while you're doing your intro there, and I did read your opinion piece, and it made me think of something that I've used a buyer's agent on a number of occasions, as indeed have you, and I was having to sell a property that I'd bought from a buyer's agent. The sales agent that I'd chosen couldn't sell it. It wasn't moving. we couldn't rent it, wasn't getting the rental that I was promised by the buyer's agent. So I went back in desperation to the buyer's agent from whom I bought it, who was more than happy to sell it on to another punter. But that's not the entertaining bit. So while I was going through this process of selling this property, which I sold and I needed to offload, but they put in front of me, Phil, a golden opportunity to purchase.
Oh, really? Who would have thought?
Which I turned down from one of their other punters about 3 months before because it wasn't a golden opportunity to purchase. And it just brings home that you've got a cohort in the mainstay that has product to sell. And, you know, the days of you and I first started buying, 15 years ago,
Yeah, it'd be about
probably.
that,
And in
yeah.
those days, you genuinely could go along to a buyer's agent because there weren't many of them. And they'd go, what do you want to do? And what are your goals? And you go, well, I want to do this. And how much have you got to borrow? And I've got about this, I can borrow this much. And I've got this much of deposit. And then they would go round and they would say, well, we're going to put together a strategy based on what you want. Now it's a conveyor belt. It's like a sushi train of stale kind of like offerings that go round and round and round until people pick them up. That's my sentiment in many cases.
Well, I tell you, it's on like Donkey Kong right now because with the scramble for SMSFs, I'm hearing from not only the team over Affinity Mortgages, but a whole bunch of other mortgage brokers, the revolving door of less than quality stock being presented to people, you know, to buy in their
But this is the thing that I love about property is it's always been the case, right? You've got this nonsense being spouted about all these astute investors, right? You've got to understand that there is a finite amount of property. It's not all a good investment. Just because I'm an investor and I buy an investment property doesn't mean I'm going to end up loaded and super wealthy. And most people who are buying property, as far as I'm aware, are punters trying to get ahead. That's certainly how you and I started out. You know, I won't go into your, you know, you're not a privileged person for a privileged background. You've worked hard. You've struggled away as a struggling journo.
Yeah.
And we bought property, you know, back then because we saw it as a way to hedge against, you know, we took a risky, you know, sort of pathway of setting up our own business, which didn't generate very much money. But this was a way that we could have a hedge, you know, against our day job. And this is the thing, you know, you've got stuff being peddled now. There has never been a greater need for buyer beware, never, because now there's not a lot of good stock on the market from what I can see. You've got product being packaged up as being the last opportunity to buy. Doesn't mean that is going to go up.
Well, the thing is that back in the day, and let's talk pre-podcast and post-podcast, right? And I'm going to say that's a seismic point in development of the property investment. And by the way, Property Buzz just lets me explore ideas. And most of the time I get it wrong, but sometimes I get it right?
So let's say, I'll give you my opinion. I'm not talking facts.
So let's go pre-podcast and post-podcast, right? You had to be a lot more active to get ripped off in property pre-podcast. Like you had to make so much more of an effort to make poor investment decisions than what there is today. Because back then, information was contained. It was hard to get property investment advice. And if you did get property investment advice, you weren't getting it from a financial planner because they weren't incentivized to do so. So you had to go somewhere else. And typically that was framed or wrapped up as a property spruiker who tried to sell you something at a seminar, right? That's how you used to get done, right? Some people get tucked up. Some people made some good decisions. Some people made less than good decisions. And we've got, you know, decades of history now of property spruikers who have tucked up people and fled into the to the night, often leaving people with poor performing assets, right? Not that dissimilar from today, but information now is so much more democratized. There's so much more information out there that's bewildering how you actually make a decision in property investment today because you do one thing and someone tells you it's the wrong thing, right? So it's harder today, I would say, to actually make sound property investment decisions despite the fact that information is so much more readily available. And we're seeing that play out right now.
I think, you know, property investment going back into, you can go back as many decades as you want, but you kind of, you know, you'd pick your property. A lot of people used to buy back then in suburbs that they lived in because they felt that they knew that suburb. Yeah. You know, the idea of going interstate is really has been an increasing attitude as you've had this democratization and this, you know, sort of knowledge-based go out and find properties and this information about markets that are heating up. You know, you would be a lot more cautious about buying outside of your really outside of your suburb, let alone outside of your state, because you felt that you knew your suburb. If you'd lived there for any amount of time, you'd seen the movement in property values. You got some sense for, sort of the desire to rent in that suburb. So you're kind of doing it off a reasonable base of common sense. And then you'd have your usual supporters to help you in your decision. You'd have your bank, which would work out whether they're going to lend you the money or not. That's a pretty good benchmark as to whether it's a reasonable investment. You'd have your conveyancer. You may, depending on how far back you want to go, you have your mortgage broker. You've now got at the front end a mechanism, a whole industry that is trying to sell product and not necessarily with the best interests of the customer at heart.
Yeah, and
I'm not saying that all buyers. Look,
well,
I'm just saying it's
this
a
is not
real
a beat up
case
of
of
buyer's agent.
It's a
I'm
case of
pro
buyer
buyer's
beware,
agent.
though. There's never been a great case of buyer beware.
Yeah, but it should always be. You've got to be responsible for your own investment decision making. I want to talk a little bit about this right now and SMSFs and some of the other dynamics around it. But I think Jacob, our producer who's over there, you got some reaction videos to it. And I think one of them might be relevant to this. There's one on Instagram, if you can bring that up. Can you find that easily and shuffle around and do all that sort of good stuff? And as it's coming together,
So your tech doesn't fail.
Well, it shouldn't.
If it
It's
does.
I think it's been swapped out, and he didn't get the brief. It's actually Paddy sitting behind the screen there right now, and as he's trying to work that out, he can do that. But it is live, so we'll keep on going while we're waiting for that. So back to SMSFs. A couple of things happening, and I'm working up an idea, and maybe it's too early to call, but there's a frenzy right now amongst, and mortgage broking market pretty well. There's a frenzy amongst mortgage brokers right now, which is they're all doing SMSF loans, right? There's a hard cut-off date. If you're not contracted before, essentially the 9th of August, the 10th of August is the date, but that's a Sunday, so you're going to have to get set for the Saturday, the 9th of August. Past that contract date, you can't get any limited recourse borrowing anymore, right? So that's happening right now. Brokers are busy. Running in parallel with that, first-time buyer volumes are down quite a lot.
Why would you be scrambling to buy your first property
and that's why I want to look at this specific the videos
Can I just
reaction.
say, and I'm not politically wired or engineered, but I fundamentally believe every purchase is an investment. You're not talking about a few $1,000s. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, and in some cases for first-time buyers over $1 million. Like, that's a lot of dough, and you're not putting your own money down. You're leveraging very heavily on that. Why would you not want an ROI?
The government doesn't talk about first-time buyers making an investment.
Why would you not consider that in any? I'll go back, Phil, when I was struggling away in the UK, and I earned a pittance when I was in the UK, and I couldn't afford to buy a home, and I was so jealous of friends of mine who did apprenticeships back then, worked for Rolls-Royce, who could buy themselves like a terrace house, not dissimilar from what you might get in inner city Melbourne or Sydney or any of the other areas where you got the old terraces, right? That's the bedrock of British property. I've got friends who'd buy them for about £17,000-18,000. My wife bought her house for £24,000. I was very, very jealous of anyone that could afford to do that. But it's everyone I knew that bought property back then as a first-time buyer saw it as an investment, right? And they all had the hope and belief that asset that they put their hard-earned cash into would appreciate in value.
Yeah, well, that's the idea. And I think a lot of the commentary right now, hence the reason why I like that video, is counter to that. And I think a lot of first-time buyers are actually sitting there going, why would I want to buy right now when the good chance of my property going down in value? Yeah. That's not why I'm investing.
Or not going up in value.
Or not going up in value.
Why don't I just rent?
And I spoke to a first-time buyer that I know him pretty well, and I went, what are you doing, mate? You're a carpenter. You make good dough. Why aren't you in the market? He goes, I don't use the 5% deposit scheme. I actually want to do it the old-fashioned way and go in at 20% deposit. Right?
Nothing's changed, and first-time buyers are no longer, it's difficult to buy in your 20s, but there are people buying in their 20s. But you've got people in their 30s, even in their 40s, are first-time buyers. But you've got a finite amount of money coming in, and you've got a lifestyle. Most people got a lifestyle they want to enjoy, and the money that you forego on your mortgage. Bear in mind that when the government stuffs up the economy and the interest rates go up, guess what? And I've had this. The first place that I bought in Australia that I lived in, I watched 9 consecutive interest rates on the same property, and my repayments on that same property went up and up and up and up and up, and the value of the property which we ended up, it was the Seaview Street one, ended up in our portfolio because I sold to our portfolio, didn't go up in value. And the stress, I had a family, I had young kids, but even if you're single or maybe just married or got a partner or whatever, it's money coming out and you get more money comes out of your pocket for the same place that you're living in.
Well, I think that's reality for a lot of people. So they're tempered. First-time buyers are waiting and watching. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm not going to take a position on that right now. But running in parallel with that, investors' borrowing capacity, those that use negative gearing as a tool, their borrowing capacity is down 20 to 30%. So there's a lot less.
I probably buck the trend a little bit around the whole negative gearing piece. I think it's wrong to have got rid of it personally, because I think that you've given, and I'm not saying anything that hasn't been said before, but you've given generations of Australians this tool to invest. And let's be really clear, this is just enabling them to buy an investment and to provide rental accommodation and to not suffer, through the shortfall between the rent that they get and their mortgage repayments, right? So I think it's wrong to have got rid of it. But the reality is, I think for property investment, I think people need to look beyond simply negative gearing. There are properties that can be positively geared still. Now, again, my opinion is that there's a gap because the buyer's agents don't focus on them because they don't actually warrant.
It's changing.
Yeah.
It's changing. And I reckon I would mark the change probably 2 weeks ago to 3 weeks ago.
So you know me. So I bought multiple properties over the last 18 months that have given, the lowest that I bought is, 7.5% yield.
Yeah.
But these are one-bedroom apartments. Right now, I'm not saying that this is the panacea for every single investor go buy one-bed apartments, but they're in good locations. There's tension and competition for them to rent. And it's a funny thing, right? Because young people want to rent them, but they don't want to buy them, seemingly. But they want to live there as a rental place. But anyway, the yield on those places is sufficient that, look, depending on looking at your, if you're buying at 95%, there's obviously going to be a problem. But if you've saved some money, you're talking about places for like $350,000, like getting even a 10% deposit for that, a 20% deposit and you avoid LMI, that's not beyond the reach of a lot of people. Like, not everyone, I know, but you're not talking about sticking a couple $100,000 in to buy a property, and you can gear them positively.
Well, this is the marked change, and again, speaking with mortgage brokers, that the rhetoric from buyer's agents, and often the rhetoric of buyer's agents is what most people consume, because they might not use a buyer's agent, but they might listen to buyer's agent podcasts, right? So they embrace and adapt a lot of those sort of strategies. There is already a whole bunch of buyer's agents who are repackaging and repositioning themselves as, we will help you find the properties that are going to give you the best rental growth.
So I've told you before,
rental growth.
I didn't buy these. So I've been helped to buy all of these, and I have not paid a buyer's agent fee for one of them. And I've used a property manager to buy these properties.
Yeah.
Very, very simply, because the first one I bought was on a property manager's rent roll, and the owner wanted to sell. Now, the owner bought sort of 14 years ago off the plan. Not a great buy. 14 years had gone down in value. I bought it for less than they paid for it. But that wasn't any skill from me being super clever. I talked to my PM about buying, and they went, well, we've got on the rent roll now, 7.8% yield.
Well, we'll talk about this, because I think a lot of investors overlook the caliber and the clout of the property manager as a partner in their investment journey. I think you're going to be a lot more of that moving forward. But buyer's agents now are repositioning their narrative around yield.
Yeah.
Because one of the reasons why is because people can't get the borrowing. Like, there's always been, you want a house on a block of land, that's where the value is. Because people's borrowing has been curtailed by 20 to 30%, they can't borrow enough now to actually buy that stuff.
Yeah.
So everyone's pivoting back to units, a lot of them in units, a lot of units in Melbourne, and the narrative around yield is the name of the game. So the point I'm making is, there's less first-time buyers. Yes, a lot of SMSF business at the moment. There's less first-time buyers in the market.
Come to an end.
There's less investors in the market. So the query or the question I have, the idea I need to pose, is there going to be a new mortgage cliff? But the mortgage cliff is not how it was packaged up a few years ago, people coming off fixed rates to variable rates. Is there not going to be enough loans to write to sustain the size of the mortgage broking industry today.
See, well, so I'll go back. That's a good point, but I'll go back a step further than that. So let's look at what sits behind that. It's competition in lending, right? So let's not worry about brokers for the time being. So my focal point is always the borrower, the customer, right? So the broking channel is a very, very valuable distribution point, but brokers depend on a diverse competitive lending market, right? Now you've got 4 big banks that would want nothing more than for all the competition to go away, and then they'll put their prices, so their margins come down. I won't bore everyone with the background to mortgage lending, but they charged a 4% margin on their cost of borrowing funds, and they did very nicely. You've got competition in mortgage lending as markets opened up, and you've got non-bank lenders coming. Guess what? Non-bank lenders put pressure on the big 4 and on the other banks. Their margins come down to stay competitive. So the danger right now is that you reduce the viability for smaller lenders to lend because there isn't enough lending in the marketplace. When smaller lenders disappear, you lose competition in lending. When you lose competition in lending, then you end up with the bigger players start to make more margin. When the bigger players make more margin, it becomes more expensive to borrow as an Australian borrower. And who's going to hurt the worst? First-time buyers.
Absolutely. So I think our tech is back on action. We might have missed the opportunity to talk about this, but we'll do it anyway. If not, we can just scoot straight past it. Jacob, your timing was impeccable. Let's have a quick go. But it is connected.
What he's doing, I'm not sure whether he knows what his name is. He's also stopped the ability of SMSF investors from creating new housing stock. So this budget is a shambles. New taxes won't help punters. And it's very clear to me that he's going to have to redo his budget again when we go back to Canberra in August. I don't think he knows what he's doing.
Well, that's Andrew Bragg. He's a senator, shadow minister for housing and homelessness. I caught up with him when we were in Canberra for the budget, and that was when they were all sort of, the coalition was there going, oh shit, how are we going to, what are the themes and the trends here? And I spoke to a lot of them, and a lot of the sort of pollies down there, and they were sort of formulating. So there's still, this is still happening now, right?
But it is.
They're banging on around this, and this SMSF thing is
but this is the thing. Sorry to interrupt you, but you go and drive this stake in at this point.
Yeah.
The ramifications are going to take months and months and years to come into play. No one really quite knows what the impact is going to be.
Well, I think the impact is, and it's coming back to this fact that mortgage volumes, let's SMSFs, it's a frenzy right now, but it's got to start coming back. We're seeing it happening, right? And whether or not you're going to have a pivot away more so to mortgage brokers, they're what are they, 80-something% market share right now, right?
80%, yeah.
Like how much more can it go, right? You talk about competition lending, but if there's less loans to write, will it be the brokers that write less loans, or will it be the major lenders who go direct write less loans? That's one point. But there's going to be less lending because there's less buyers. And one of the purposes of the government's decisions around the budget and property taxes is to slow down the property market by fragmenting competition within it. So they want less investors in the market, and there are less investors in the market. Some markets, so you talk about buying units for $350,000 down in Melbourne. That's where first-time buyers are operating. That's where a lot of investors are operating now. There's going to be a lot of pressure on those markets moving forward, and I think you're going to get certain pockets are going to be strong, certain pockets are going to be a lot weak. But when it comes to competition amongst lenders, I do note that this week, I think 14 to 6, I can't remember, it's either 14 or 16 lenders have already dropped their rates on variable rate mortgages. So they're already coming down, right? So
let's just look at that for a second.
Yeah.
So and just to be clear, so you go, great, if you're a punter, if your mortgage rate has come down, that's great. But you've got to look a little bit beyond that. And that's lenders eroding their margin, right? So if you're big 4 banks that make billions and billions of dollars of profit, you can play those mechanisms. Yeah. So you've got to be very careful what you end up with. Smaller lenders have to, if you can't lend to investors or to SMSF buyers, you end up with not much of a market to lend to, because those lenders have typically played in areas that the major banks are not so keen to play.
Property investors are still investing in property. It's people who are sitting in the fringes who aren't necessarily property investors and or can't get the borrowing anymore, are tapped out. So I think driven investors are still investing, and they're probably more likely to move towards those second tier or non-bank lenders as a result of, and I'm generalising here, but they're borrowing clout, maybe the structure that they earn their income. There's a lot more flexibility down there. So even though there might be less lending in the market and competition may dry up amongst lenders, I think you may get innovation.
I wonder how many new lenders. Like
you're going to get innovation.
This is the thing, right? You've got this water and oil situation. The way that I see it, you've got people who've bought, maybe people who've been buying for decades. People who've got a portfolio, maybe people who've got a good LVR in that portfolio. So for them, happy days. There's going to be rich pickings for those that are cashed up. For new investors, and again, we'll go back to where we started out. There's why you've got to look at why you would go, whether you're a first-time buyer or a first-time investor. Why is it you're going to buy into this market right now? Now, I actually believe it is a very, very good opportunity for both of those cohorts, as long as they actually have a lot of diligence in understanding what they're buying and why they're buying it. But on face value, and this is with the absolute frenzy of kind of commentary from all and sundry, unqualified people sprouting all sorts of things. I think there's what that tends to. You've got messaging coming from the government, you've got messaging coming from mainstream media, and you've got people who are looking to make this bold move into investment that are going to get stunned and are going to be fearful and going to be hesitant. So you're going to end up with a bit of an oil and water type approach.
Well, now more than ever before, buyer beware. It's already coming through, and again, chatting with mortgage brokers, and I revert to the team over at Finney Mortgages a lot around this. They're already saying valuations aren't stacking up. So vals aren't stacking up, both in terms of the value of the property, but rental.
And let's just talk about that for a moment, right? Because we've bought places before, going back 15 years. We bought one where the val didn't stack up. So what that means is, it doesn't mean that you can't buy the property. It means that they will lend against the valuation based on 80% or 90% or whatever it is. So you got to stump the dough up yourself.
You got to find a gap. So valuations aren't stacking up, and rental appraisals aren't stacking up. So I'm even hearing with this frenzy of SMSFs, and right or wrong, they'll go get a loan.
Who does the rental appraisal though? Here's the thing.
Well, this is it. Typically,
so. You've got to be careful who's in the rent. If it's the bloke or woman selling you the property and they're telling you what great rent.
High.
So you've got to be really, really careful.
So it's actually happening now.
And is that really a rental appraisal, or is that some punter going, yes, my estimate will be that it's going to be, $450 a week and blah, 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 blah.
Well, it's sort of irrelevant, because if the lender, well, it is relevant. If the lender is using a rental appraisal as a measurement of your serviceability, that's okay. But what's happening is that in between, and it's taking place, and I queried this, and it's happening a lot, that between the rental appraisal going to the lender, say, quick, hurry up and get my lending aside of my self-managed super fund, people are letting the properties to people, much less than what the rental appraisal is. So people are finding huge gaps, large gaps, inside of their self-managed super funds. They're getting a double whammy of the valuation not stacking up, and then also the rental appraisal not stacking up. So they're getting hit on both sides. So they've got to cover the gap, and it's hard to get money into your super fund. It's not, you can't just go and conjure it up. You've got to get it in there in a compliant fashion to cover the gap if a vow doesn't stack up. And then if they won't lend you the whole amount because the rental appraisal is not contributing to it, you've got to find that dough as well. It's
so I've got a question for you. You may not know this. So tell me what SMSF buyers look like. Are we looking at a demographic of people closer to yours and my age? Are we looking at people buying in SMSFs a bit younger?
40s and 50s typically is when people are setting up. And it's quite the nostalgic term, but they're cops and nurses, and they're sort of middle Australia.
I can remember when we talked about getting out, I was sick and tired of what my superannuation company had done with my BT, I think we had. I can't remember what we had. Absolutely hopeless. Yeah. They make their money, incidentally, come rain, wind or shine. And went through the fairly painful process of getting rid of all that. And I put it in my SMSF, and then it sat there, and I didn't really do anything with it. So I bought in my SMSF just over a year ago. I'm just interested to know who the people are now that are getting walloped with this, sort of shortfall. Is it people our age? Is it?
Yeah. It's middle Australia. it's middle Australia getting walloped.
And if you've gone lean on your SMSF, then maybe you've got a larger SMSF and it's going to be a moot point in a few months. But if you've got a larger SMSF and you've used some of it to buy property. You've got a buffer in there, right? If you've maxed it to go and get into the investment market.
And traditionally, most people max it, right? Because they
and then you've got the other mechanism of interest rates as well as income through.
And the whole issue around, you talk about competition in mortgages, you've had some really good lenders emerge over the last period of time focusing on SMSF lending, right? They're going to have to find new markets.
Property buying is a brutal game. Investing in property and buying property is brutal. There
and you're not thanked by anyone for it.
So many people that I know that have come unstuck over the years, but they're equally, it does fascinate me. And I absolutely love property because they're through being, you've got the old fear and greed kind of elements that affect everyone in any investment, sort of whether it's stocks and shares or, seed capital into the next big thing in tech. You've still got that element. You've got to be wary of getting too greedy around things. You've also got to be conscious on the flip side of getting too frightened. Yeah. So on a human level, understanding those two forces when you're investing or buying anything. And property is a very solid investment. It isn't this massive get rich quick mechanism which gets purported by either spruikers or maybe the government tend to point to it. It's just a very solid, stable way for Australians just to get ahead.
Well, that's the idea, and I think that's why everyone. That's why,
and it will be as well. By the way, Phil, this is
it's a moment in time.
Change.
It's a moment in time, but hence the reason why the budget has caused such a furore amongst everyone, because people are thinking, well, you can't take away what other people have had, and I spoke about this in the last property buzz I did. This idea of like the government keeps referring to, we're trying to make property fair, and I'm like,
why?
What does fair mean?
Why? But why?
But this is the point, right?
Why?
What is fair, right? And things don't have to be fair; they can be a bit unfair depending on.
Like what else is fair?
I know. I know. This is so. I'm trying to capture this idea at the moment around fairness, and they keep talking about fairness.
So, what should everyone work in an investment bank? Would that be fair? Should everyone get paid $1 million a year? Would that be fair? That would talk rubbish.
Yeah. So this is this idea I'm developing around fairness.
Do you know what my old man said to me?
But they think
my old man said to me years ago when I was whining about something when I was probably about 11 years old, as I used to do, probably still do now, and his answer was. I said, can I do something? He went, no. And I go, it's not fair. And he goes, he looked at me, a little bit of a smirk, and he goes, life's not fair. And I won't repeat the words on air, what I thought, but it took me decades to actually understand what that meant. Life is not fair.
So why do we have our leader, our fearless leader, telling everyone they're trying to get greater fairness for everyone? We want property to be fairer. And they haven't been able to conceptualise or articulate what fairness yet means. So there's a point. I haven't yet landed exactly what it's going to be. So watch this place. But I'm going to beat my bonnet around fairness in property at the moment.
It's just rubbish.
It is just rubbish. So a couple of ideas I'm developing now. This idea around a new mortgage cliff, whether that's the right conception, the right way to view it. But there will be less mortgages to be written, I believe. So therefore, who will be compromised and where will that reduction take place? I think there's going to be innovation in lending. So I think lenders, to your point, are going to need to be more innovative. And innovative in lending means shades of policy, right? They can be a bit more flexible here and there and this, that, and the other. I think you're going to see an emergence of a whole new type. I don't yet know what it looks like, but a whole new type of policy settings from some of these lenders, which will be good for the right investors if you are ready, geared, got the right strategy and everything in place. So there's a bit there. I'm conscious that it's a bit samey, today's property buzz, and what it was last Friday. That's because everything at the moment is still built around all commentary I'm seeing in the market and coming through all the media that I'm consuming is all around this SMSF discussion. So
it's going to be a moment in time because that's
we'll move on.
Going to wash through.
It's got a hard date, but I think there's got to be consequences to it. You're going to get subsequent to this point.
So I know that you can buy commercial.
Yeah.
And you've got your negative gearing on your commercial. You can buy commercial in your SMSF, can you?
Correct.
Okay, so you can still buy commercial in your SMSF.
No, you can still buy resi in your SMSF. You can't leverage it.
Oh, right. Okay, so it's just a leverage.
Yeah, and that's
but
why
you can leverage on commercial.
Yeah, but that's why residential property in super made sense because you're leveraging,
of course.
but can't leverage.
You can go buy if you've got like a large amount of money. But why would you ever do that? What's the point in doing that?
If you think there's not that many good resi assets out there, that it's amplified 1,000,000% in commercial.
If you had the dough, again, if you had the dough, and you could buy a $350,000 place, which I've bought.
Yeah, you go buy cash.
Outside of, but if you
Yeah.
bought that in your SMSF for cash and you're getting a 7-8% yield on that, the best I've got is 8.5%. That's better than what you get in the bank.
It's hard. It's hard to get. It's hard to get money into your super fund.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
You know,
well,
so
unless you want to get taxed on the
you're
way
either
in.
selling, you're either selling assets you already have, but it is actually an asset now to have debt inside of your super fund. So you wouldn't be selling properties that have debt against it.
It's all.
I'm not providing advice
It's
there.
all going to settle down.
It
It's
will
the
settle
thing,
down.
you know, like the property market will just keep doing its thing.
Yeah,
you know.
it'll just look differently. You know, every man is dog now is an expert.
The point that you're making, though, which I do concur with, is the impact on lending, if indeed there is a link, is something that all Australians should be very, very conscious of.
Well, the point is, the worst scenario we want to find ourselves in is that there's less lenders in the market, there's less
Yes.
pressure
Yeah.
on competition.
Yeah.
So we don't want mortgage broker market share to be eroded
And this is the
because
problem
of
with
the slowdown in mortgage
government,
lending.
government policy has kind of looked at a bullseye and ignored everything else around the board, and they've gone, bang, we're going to hit that.
Yeah.
But there are shockwaves around it, impacts on.
But that's my problem. They want to hit that. They're hitting that for the purpose of fairness. They're saying their strategy is built, or it's a fairness strategy. What's your strategy? It's make property fairer for everyone.
I'll vote for that.
Yeah. Go ahead. Right, we're going to do another reaction video.
Oh, yeah.
Jacob, let's do it. We don't know what these are. So we'll see how we go. Oh, hang on. What was that? That looks like a little
No, the
emoji.
Things that do
Okay.
not add value to your home. I am a valuer. Let's go. Putting a toilet and a shower in the laundry at the back of the house does not create a second bathroom. Converting a bedroom into a wardrobe does not add value. Excessively spending on finishes that the buyer does not demand does not add value. Swimming pools in entry-level family areas does not add value. Highly personalised styling does not add value. Garage conversions into a bedroom does not add value.
No, you got to love TikTok.
All fair comment.
I disagree with a fair few of them.
I don't know. I think there's quite a few of those things that do not add value.
I
What do
agree
you
with
think?
that.
What do you think does add value?
Adding bedrooms typically. I'm not saying converting a garage, but
No,
she
she said convert, and she said turning your garage into a bedroom.
No, but she said something else. Turning into a bedroom it was like a closet or a wardrobe or something. If you can add another room in your bedroom,
there is very specific criteria that constitutes a bedroom.
Correct.
And there's a colleague of ours who bought a 3-bedroom house and sold a 2-bedroom house.
they got sold a 2-bedroom.
No,
house.
they bought a 3-bedroom house, and when they came to sell it, it was sold as a 2-bedroom house because one of them wasn't a bedroom.
Wasn't
I won't
big
mention
enough.
his name.
Okay, I didn't know
But
about
yeah,
this.
in Petersham, a colleague of ours, you remember?
Okay, I think I know who you mean.
Yeah. He bought a 3-bedroom house, sold a 2-bedroom house because the agent that sold it for him went, nah, that's not a bedroom.
Yeah, there you go. So a
And he
bedroom
lost.
is a bedroom.
And he lost, I reckon, probably $200,000 or $300,000.
Yeah.
On the value of that home.
But I disagree because I can think of a property and I can think of a property on the Central Coast that we added a bedroom into, right?
Yep.
That added significant amount of value
Adding
to
a
it.
genuine bedroom, definitely 100%.
Yeah.
Turning a garage into a bedroom.
Yeah.
You know.
Stuff like that, like that's very,
look,
that's just TikTok
you just-
stuff, right?
of course.
It's just TikTok stuff.
Yeah. But I mean, like,
everyone's an
would
expert.
anyone actually do any of those things she's warning against? You know?
Probably. They must do if
you
she's
think?
telling people not to.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I shall have to note them down, make sure I don't do them then.
You can find that stuff. It's just everywhere on the TikTok. And I don't know what she's selling. What do you think she was selling? She was
Advertising, I think. for a
Advertising,
TikTok account,
really?
I would imagine. That's what
Was she a
most of them do,
valuer?
don't they?
No, what was she?
I don't know.
Mate, valuers.
Said she was a valuer.
Mate, I'll tell you, the next big thing in property, if you want to look at where the rorts are going to be, valuations.
Oh, absolutely.
Mate, just wait. In about 6 months, you're going to get every single man. I reckon. No, here's a good idea. Someone's got to set up the Australian Valuers Institute.
Yeah.
So we could teach you today to become a valuer, and it's the next big thing. Every property needs to be valued in Australia prior to
There's a couple of
June
different. There's
30.
a couple of different like
Yeah.
pain points. When you're either buying or selling, and when you're selling, when you're buying, valuation. If you end up buying it from all this valued at, that's pretty painful.
Yeah.
When you're selling Peston buildings, when they come around, they go, there's signs of termites, you've got damage here, there's water there, there's this, there's that, and you just go, it's going to cost me. When you're selling, you're sitting there with bated breath for the pest and building.
You're waiting how bad
when
it
you're
is.
buying, the valuation, or if equally if you're looking to refinance, the val coming in.
Oh, look, if you want to add value to your property, if you want to get a quick val uplift, whether you're selling or you're trying to get a refinance, or you want to get a bed tenant in there, paint is probably the cheapest thing you can do. Put new paint on the walls.
There's value in terms of income. So there's two different types of values. Capital value and liquor paint will not do that.
Carpet.
It might if you're selling it. So there's two different types of value, right? I've got here's a property
for the purpose of refinancing or selling.
I reckon sticking a liquor paint on it for a refi is not going to do much difference.
You'd be surprised.
But I'd say for selling it can make a profound difference.
Furnishings is pretty good. Your kitchen's pretty good.
So back to your mate there, the valuer. So again, if you want to pick apart what she said, if I'm selling and I'm going to go through and I'm going to stage it and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And my case in point there with our friend who bought a 3-bedroom house and sold a 2-bedroom house, clearly, there you go. Some room that wasn't a bedroom being turned to a bedroom. Happy days for the seller, not so good for the buyer.
Yeah, tucked up. But if you want to add value for rentals, air conditioning's pretty good. Washing machine's pretty good.
Yeah.
A dishwasher sort of helps quite a lot. All that good stuff. But so much compliance. But when you look in for valuers I think it's Melbourne now, the vendor needs to buy the pest and building inspection.
Yeah.
So the idea, and every valuer is going, oh, that sucks, because they just buy one and go get to everyone. You can still get your own valuation. People just go, all right, no worries. And I reckon there's going to be rorts there because you want a friendly valuer.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's do, conscious of the time, Jacob, let's do the final reaction
Things
video.
that
Does anybody else feel like the wrong people are angry about house prices right now? I feel like people like Mark Brewis and Dave Hughes, who get their economics from AI and watching reruns of The Apprentice in 2010, are coming onto camera and weeping about house prices going down. We should be the ones weeping. We should be the ones who are angry. Look at this graph. House prices have doubled in the last 10 years, and now the banks are predicting they're going to go down by 2% in the next year. See that dent in the graph? That's what they're weeping about. They're weeping about a dent. Mark Brewis and Dave Hughes and these people who have property empires are weeping about a dent. We should be weeping about the whole fucking graph. But we're not. We're not. We're just buckering up and keep on keeping on. We're like, yes, we'll take a little drop, okay? But we want more.
Well, apologies for the language if you're driving in your car with children.
It's a bit shocking.
Who's we?
I don't know. I know he's got a sunroof in his car.
It's a bit fancy.
Yeah, absolutely fancy.
He's not struggling.
He's not weeping.
Man, I didn't get a sunroof till I was...
I don't really know what he's talking about. He's talking about watching reruns of The Apprentice. Wasn't Mark Boris in The Apprentice?
Wasn't he The Apprentice?
Yeah. And getting all their info from AI? Isn't he getting all his info from AI?
I don't know.
I don't know. Look, everyone's entitled to their opinion, right? Like these punters, they just want eyeballs on their...
Who's the we? Who is
I
we?
don't know.
Is he assuming it was a young person?
I think people with sunroofs.
People with sunroofs are getting advantage. Oh, is that what?
Do you reckon he lives in his car?
He must live in his car. He's got a second bedroom. He's even got a sun. That's sunroof
Yeah,
money.
it's the back seats.
Mate, if you want to add value to your property, sunroofs.
look.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's just eyeballs on, Are they complaining about house prices? Is that really? I don't know. I haven't heard what they're saying.
No, I think
is that the fundamental complaint?
Well, so I think Mark Boris on his podcast actually interviewed Dave Hughes. Dave Hughes, the comedian, right? So
I do know
Dave Hughes gone, pretty sort of nuclear on all this. And everyone's calling out all the faults of the budget. And again, it's the most divided I've ever seen the nation around something economically orientated, right? Everyone has a huge opinion.
I can't speak for Mark Boris or Dave Hughes for that matter. I don't know any cohort that wants to see property prices spiraling away.
A lot of their positioning is around all these younger people who are taking advantage of quite attractive government incentives to enter the property market, finding themselves owning property that's worth less than what the debt is against it. That's the reason why 2% matters.
Yeah, I don't think Mark's particularly worried about his own welfare.
I think he's fine.
Yeah.
I think he's okay. But, some people are talking about a housing correction up to 10%, right, in this particular market.
The thing is, again, you've got people that like to feel like they've been hard done by.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to get those people that feel hard done by. So old Albo can make everything fair for everyone, and you're still going to get pissed off people. That's the reality, because that's human nature.
Yeah, and that's the way it works. That's the way it works. So I don't think he thinks it's very fair.
From my experience, I don't think he's representative. I'm old, but my daughter is similar age.
I think he's quite representative of a younger cohort, but much like as people get older, they become more conservative.
Yeah.
As people get older, their attitude and aptitude towards the way the economy works and the realities of life advances quite a lot because it's called experience, right? So, I think it'd be quite challenging to be looking at today's market and someone who is a property investor with a multiple portfolio, and you're a young 20-year-old sitting there struggling, 25-year-old sitting there struggling, when the type of benchmarking you can use paints a pretty dire picture, where you look at them and go, well, 30 years ago, it only cost you 7 times your annual salary to enter the city market. Now it's, I don't know what it is, 14 times.
Don't you think it's funny, though, grabbing
That's
this?
not fair.
It's as if the government's decided that first-time buyers only existed in 2026. They didn't exist in 2025 or 2024 or 2014 or 2010. It's as if suddenly there's just this one little window and they won't exist in 2027.
No.
It's like there's always been first-time. People fortunate enough to buy a property are a first-time buyer once. And then guess what? Once you bought your property, you don't want flat house prices.
Well, this is the point.
Who
That's why
does?
experience. No one wants it.
And I think when you do buy, I'll tell you, when I bought my first place, I sat there willing the market to go up. That's all I did. Didn't do. But
And
then
often it
all
doesn't.
you want to see is growth once you've bought. And that's the same for everybody.
Yeah.
Because most people struggle to get their first place. I worked my ring off to go and get my first place.
Yeah.
I did without.
I don't know what data is used there, by the way, that graph. I reckon that might be Sydney or Melbourne. Maybe it's Sydney. Sydney's come back a
Flashed
bit.
up for a second with his little red mark around it.
Sydney's come back a bit, but I tell you what.
You can find data to fit any argument.
Yeah, that's the way it is. So anyway,
So what's going to happen then, Phil? Is this...
I don't know. It's Groundhog Day on Property Buzz.
It's always Groundhog Day.
It's
on
Groundhog
Property
Day on Property Buzz. I don't know. Hopefully something good happens. It's getting a bit repetitive talking about SMSF. So I'm fatigued by it all. But I'm not fatigued by the fact that a lot of people are going to make poor investment decisions.
It's interesting looking
at this point
without
in time.
getting too deep into this stage. You're looking at certain markets that have had a lot of wind in their sails coming off. Perth and Brizzy is now looking like it's coming off the ball. Certainly from clearance rates and stock on markets. So it's a cyclical. It's a cyclical market, and it's a patchwork market. It's not the property market. It's not even Brisbane and Perth. It's suburbs, and streets within suburbs.
Mate, some markets are running pretty hot.
Yeah, they are. Did you get calls from agents trying to? So I either get people phoning me up going, "Oh, that place that you bought, do you want to sell it? And what would you want for it? And all that stuff." And then they're going, "Yeah, we've got this place here." And
so let's conclude this. Tell me about using property managers as a proxy to, or instead of, or alternative of buyers agents.
So I because I've always been focused on yield, because and the more properties I've bought, the yield has been very, very important. So I've always phoned up property. If I'm going to buy in a particular suburb, I will just phone up property managers and I will ask them what properties generate the best yield, what properties are the most desirable, what properties tend not to be vacant, and they will tell you which streets, which areas, and the whys and wherefores, and they will generally give their time, and they will just give you information. So that was something I've always known.
Is there an argument that they would know their local area better than?
Well, of course they do.
A
So here's
buyer's
the thing,
agent
right,
would?
Phil?
Yeah.
Buyers agents are property nomads. They rove around, becoming experts on any street, any suburb, anywhere in Australia. You want Darwin? We know Darwin, right? PMs, property managers, agencies are rooted to their suburb. Their building is in that suburb. They live in that suburb. They rent properties in that suburb. If you want to find out, if you know, and this is where I say you've got to take ownership of what you're doing, know where you want to buy. Don't let someone else make that decision for you. do your homework, have an opinion on where you want to buy, and then phone up a property expert in that area, a property manager, not the sales agent. Speak to the property manager. They're cut from different cloth. And you ask them, say, look, I'm thinking about, and you just go, look, I'm thinking about buying this area. What kind of properties do you find generally get the best rental yields? Which ones are generally have the lowest vacancy rates? Which ones, and then you can also ask, say, look, which ones do you find typically have the greatest increase in rental values? And they will tell you, and there's usually a correlation between desirable rental property, and there is some correlation with capital growth. Everyone goes out chasing after capital growth first, but capital growth is less predictable than yield. So I've done that for a long time. So I was going to buy a place. I'd gone and done my own homework, and I was sick of using buyer's agents. I went, no, I've been around long enough. I'm going to buy a place, and I looked for a place in Carlton. Negotiate with the agent, got them down a little bit, 2-bedder, 60 square meters, decent looking apartment, looked good to me. And they went, I'd worked out as about a 5.3% yield. And I went, well, that's good. I phoned up my PM. I actually sent an email to my PM and I went, look, I'm going to put this on the rent roll because...
So you already had a relationship with them?
So I already had a property. I had one property, which is, funnily enough, the one that I flogged.
Okay.
Because it was so poor that the buyer's agent had put me into that they couldn't rent it, right? So I phoned them up and I went, but they were a good property manager. They gave me information. They gave me really honest insights into what was going on. Anyway, so I said, look, I'm going to buy this place. I'm going to put it with you, because you're a good property manager. I've got other places in Melbourne. And I said at the end of the email, I went, what do you think? Just that question. And this guy, he's actually German, so he's very straight. And he came back and he went, well, it's close to a graveyard. The road it's on is a thoroughfare. It's Carlton in name, but not really. It's so far out of Carlton, there's nothing cool going on there. And then he asked me a question. He goes, what's important to your investment? So I picked the phone up to him and I went, okay. I went, look, I want yield. I said, look, I'm just looking for yield. I thought 5.2% was a good yield. He goes, I've got a place now on my rent roll, and I've already said this at the beginning of the podcast, that's being sold and it's got a 7.8% yield. And I went, okay, well, I'll buy that. He goes, but it's a 1-bedder, not a 2-bedder. And I don't care. Because 7.8% is a percentage yield on that property. So if you use a property manager, and I've subsequently bought a number of properties with that property manager, not that's on their rent roll, but the principal has said, well, I'll go find you properties. I want 7+ % yield.
So why would the principal do that? Are they getting a listing because they're selling it, or
this is very, very, very interesting, and this is a very new concept. So you've got to look at sort of, I guess, alignment in objectives. So I'm going to put my rental property with them in their agency. They charge me a management fee, 7%, I believe it is. I pay them. They're a good property manager. So they make sure my property is tenanted. They make sure that the rental yield is good and so forth. And then the more rent that they get, the more they make with their percentage. It's a fairly simple symbiotic relationship. So the principal, and I went down and met the principal when I bought this one off their rent roll, and he's a good guy. And I chatted to him, and he said, look, I said, look, property management's very, very undervalued in Australia. You've got these quiet achievers. He said, my rent roll, which is the property management side of the business where all the rental properties sit, goes really important to me. He said, Alex, if you want to buy more properties that are within this location, I will go and find them for you, and I will tell you the ones that get the best rental yields, the ones that are likely to have the greatest capital growth, the ones that don't have, he goes, you typically at the moment in the market, it's the 1-bedders that are looking good. He goes, I'll tell you the buildings that don't have cladding issues and have got low body corp or strata. So he goes, because the reason, and he goes, because if you put that on my rent roll, then I'm growing my rent roll, I get an income off it, and this is an asset that is valuable to me. It's what my agency's business value is based on. I went, cool. Like, he didn't charge me, so I bought quite a few places with him and paid a cent to him in a buyer's agent fee because...
But has he been paid as a...
No.
No.
Do you know what?
Yeah.
Whether he has or hasn't, all the valuations have come in.
But how does he find the properties for you?
Because he just goes... Because he knows this is the thing about a property manager. They know every property in that suburb, right? Because this is the thing. Buyer's agents are nomads.
Yeah.
And there's some good ones out there, and
some very good ones.
I've done well with buyers agents, and there are some good ones operating now, but there are tons of poor ones, and all they're doing is flogging product. They're not doing anything bespoke, and they will suddenly become an expert on whatever's selling quickly. You go to a property manager, they only operate in that suburb. If you know where you want to buy, and they'll help you shape your views, because they don't benefit. They don't have to go, yes, Phil, we recommend you get a house and land because of blah, blah, blah. They'll just tell you, if you're buying on yield with the hope of some capital growth in the future, they will deal with you honestly, and they will give you the best information they've got, and they actually know what's happening in their local area. They live and breathe it.
There you go. Interesting concept, but there's certainly something in it. I don't know if buyers agents would like to hear this, but
I've talked to buyers agents. It's just and there's you're not signing an agreement with them. You don't phone up a property manager and go, I'm thinking about buying in your area. Look, I'm going to be looking for a property manager to partner. Right? They're going to go, sure. How can I help you?
Well, it's all contingent because they want the rental.
Well, they just go, sure. How can I help you?
Yeah.
So there's they're not selling you anything either, because you may see something listed on realestate.com or Domain or wherever you choose to view your property. You might go, oh, I wonder what this one's going to be like. You don't need to tell them what you're thinking of buying.
So I imagine the point there's not all property managers that are created equal.
I think
Certain
a
property
lot
managers
of
get
them. I think if you speak to this isn't the forum to talk about property managers, but I reckon most of them will know what properties rent for in their local market, and talk to two or three. Incidentally, you don't just if you do. This is what I'm saying. The responsibility, all this fairness nonsense, right? Be the custodian of your own destiny as an investor, right? Take responsibility. Don't listen to what some spruiker's telling you. Go away and do your hard yards. But if you want a tip, it's not a trick. It's a tip. Decide where you want to buy. And even if a buyer's agent is telling you to buy in that area, still do your homework. Talk to the PMs and find out what the yields are.
Well, now more than ever before, people are rushing into putting anything in their self-managed super fund.
But you can go to an agency, and you may go and if you want to be smart, if you want to be clever, if you know that buyers agents are buying in a certain suburb, right? Phone up the property manager and say, have you got anything for your rent roll that's for sale at the moment? Guess what? You won't pay a fee for that.
It's off market.
But it genuinely is, because everyone can access off market. They've just got the nous to go and do it for themselves. It's not some magical, mystical skill that buyers agents have. They just charge you a fee for it.
Yeah. Well, it used to be magical, mystical, because there was very few buyers agents in the market.
But people are lazy.
Yeah.
Or let's be unkind. Some buyers are lazy. Some buyers are daunted. I'm saying it's not that daunting if you get yourself educated and take some responsibility.
Yeah. No, that's good. Good insights. Thanks, Alex. Well, that's
it's
probably
not insights, it's just my opinion.
Well, same but different. Opinions okay. That's why we call it Property Buzz. We're supposed to have opinions on this. It's the product. We don't always get it right. Myself particularly, I probably 50-50 at the moment, and I'm quite happy with those.
Oh, your ratio's going up, is it?
Yeah. If I get 50% of the calls right, I'm okay with 50% of the calls wrong. But this is not advice by any means. This is just musings about what's going on with a lens which is probably quite unique in terms of what I do for a living and the people I get to talk to and what I'm seeing and what I'm consuming. So that's the sort of headlines for this week, and the themes that I'm seeing. The core takeaway for everyone, if you are rushing into getting a residential property inside of your super fund with debt against it, just be extra cautious right now. Make sure you're speaking to all those different advisors that you should be speaking to in order to do it the right way, the compliant way, and you certainly have obligations when it comes to your investment strategy inside of your self-managed super fund. So you do get audited every single year in your super fund if you didn't know, and you need to remain compliant. Otherwise, you may find yourself in a spot of bother. But the key thing is that if you put a poor performing asset inside of your self-managed super fund with debt against it, you may not be able to refinance it. The valuations might not stack up. You may not be able to find tenants for it. And that's going to be a millstone around your neck that you do not want. Buyer beware. Thanks for tuning in. This is Property Buzz. We'll see you again next Friday. Until then, bye-bye.